we're team cheeseburger today, or we're team kale today, right? So which one you gonna be? But when one person goes cheeseburger and the other person goes kale, then well, we're not a team anymore. Maybe we can meet in the middle somewhere. I don't know. Maybe that's like a turkey burger.
Isaiah, you're good at this. I'm going to remember that. Are you team kale or are you team cheeseburger? That's classic. I love that.
Hey everyone, I'm Meredith Shirey. I'm a licensed psychotherapist specializing in relationship issues.
And I'm Isaiah Vallejo-Justy, a divorce attorney.
This is a podcast about filling in the gaps of our relationships, the deeply personal choices we make for our families and ourselves,
and the impact our actions have on the rest of our lives. This is Love Me or Leave Me.
Hey everyone, welcome back. This is episode 7, and for the first 6 episodes, some of our topics were a little heavy, so we wanted to do something different today that would be really fun, and it just also happens to coincide with our first guest. We're so excited.
Super excited. Author, entrepreneur, nutritionist, food guru. These are the words I'd use to describe our guest today, Susan Greeley, who's a nutritionist. She's amazing and one of the most positive people I know. And she's here today to help us keep it sexy and keep it healthy in our relationships. Welcome, Susan.
Wow. Thanks, Isaiah. Thank you, Meredith. I'm really thrilled to be here.
Yeah, we're thrilled to have you. So, Susan, can you tell us a little bit about your background? How did you get into nutrition?
Oh, sure. That's a long story. Sure, we have time? No. Okay. All right. I'll give you the quick version. When I was a teenager, I spent a year abroad in Germany, and I don't tell too many people this story. I was an exchange student, and believe it or not, in Germany they are rather health conscious, and the food there. And I don't want to entirely date myself. This was a long time ago, and it was my introduction to fresh from the farm foods and whole grains, really everything. If you think of those heavy, dense German breads that I love. And so that got me interested. It was my senior year of high school. And then when I was in college, I was a chemistry major and I took a sprint course in nutrition. I know it's dry chemistry wasn't really me. And so I'll talk about this being true to yourself. And I took this sprint nutrition course and I absolutely loved it. And it was at that moment really that I decided to go and study nutrition 30 years later.
Right now, with the way everything is kind of going, I know for me, the struggle is real. We're at home all the time and I want pizza and I want burgers. And, my family wants kind of the same thing. You're talking about dense German bread and things like that. How do we control ourselves in this mode of environment that we're in?
Manage the COVID cravings, you mean?
Manage the COVID cravings.
COVID cravings.
They are crazy because people want comfort food. So that's a really relevant, fabulous question. And I know it's a tricky one for a lot of people these days because that little app on your phone to get takeout is way too easy to use. And same with any type of ordering out. But I think at this point, so here we are, 10, 11 months into this pandemic. And I think in that acute phase that stress got to people and things just went totally off. And then we got into the chronic phase where a lot of people recognize, okay, these are not sustainable bad habits that I've gotten into. So how do I turn it around? And it's not easy. And it does take a conscious decision on a day-to-day basis. So this is what I work with people on. There are no quick and easy fixes necessarily, Isaiah. However, I do really like to tell people to take a step back, like take a deep breath and say, we're going to get through this. And the best way to support yourself right now is to really make diet a priority, meaning your daily diet, the foods you eat, your nutrition probably matters more now than it ever did, or at least people are listening to when I talk about that, which makes me happy because I really like showing people that it's easier than they think to eat a healthy diet on a daily basis. Then you feel better, you have better energy, you sleep better, you have better relationships. And that's proven. If you eat junk, then you could really feel lousy and your mood swings may kind of go out of control for some people. So it's all tied together. And that said, whether you're out at grocery stores or still ordering home delivered, then you have to prioritize. Isaiah knows I say this a lot, what I call the high water content foods, meaning fruits, vegetables, get in the salads, even if it means frozen food. So there's just a lot of tips that I could give listeners and people in general is what I talk about day in and day out to really support them through this truly crazy, unprecedented time for all of us.
When does comfort food end up actually declining your mental health and ends up being counterproductive. Because we were talking about how, and I'm sure you've seen this, that there's this just onslaught of depression. I actually have to have this conversation multiple times a week with clients, where most people would probably meet criteria for depression right now, especially with the isolation, lack of motivation, those things. And it's all just because of this circumstance we're all in. And finding joy can be hard. So when they tell me, like, I had a cookie, I'm like, listen, if that cookie gave you joy, then like, great, go for it. But I realize now, like, based on what you're saying, I might actually be hurting them if I'm saying that.
Oh, I think it's the way you're framing it for them, Meredith, is actually perfect. And if that does bring you joy in that moment, that one cookie, and I think that that's actually a key point to make there is have these set treats for yourself rather than it just be any day, anytime, and they're
Mm.
just part of your normal daily routine, right? Then you don't appreciate it. It's kind of like the highs and lows. You can't appreciate the highs unless you have the lows. So, reserve the treats for that where it's going to be a pick me up and bring you a little joy. And I have these conversations a lot too, because just as anybody else, I want my treats and I just don't make them regular foods. So they still maintain that, being special and not going overboard with it. Finding the moderation and balance in this day to day where we've lost a lot of boundaries between work and our personal lives. And so those boundaries kind of have gone out the wayside with our diets too.
I probably speak for many people when I say, well, have you ever tried to just have one cookie, really, or just one Oreo? So how is it that we're bombarded with this great food and we're kind of at home and maybe a little depressed, and somebody like me says, "Oh, one Oreo is nice."
All right, I got to throw in a rhyme. Yeah, you got to water the root to eat the fruit. So like, yeah, you got to focus on your base diet, some healthy habits, and that's a great point, Isaiah, with knowing yourself is really the key. And there are some people who can do moderation and plenty who cannot. I think Isaiah knows that I often work with people to find a really call it a palatable replacement. In other words, if you know the cookies are a trigger for you, don't even go there. The Pringles, don't pop
Mm.
that lid. That's my kids, by the way. Forget it. Doritos, Pringles, the savory snacks. And there are plenty of other foods that you can find, though, that are satisfying, but just don't like hijack your brain. I think preventing what I call those a pizza pitfall, a Pringles pitfall, whatever it is that you're just not going to feel well after is really important. And still finding other foods that you're like, wow, yeah, that was indulgent and I feel so much better.
Hi, my name is Meredith. I'm going to confess to having done Oreo overdose. There was at least a week or two where I ate Oreos for dinner like 3 nights in a row.
Oh no. And I'll bet you did not feel so good after.
I mean, I justified it because I was also doing yoga like crazy. So I was like, well, whatever. But since then, I've learned that, to your point about, okay, if I know I'm going to go ham on these Oreos, I cannot have Oreos in my house because I know I will eat an entire row.
But maybe you can have a pint of ice cream. And
No, that's not good either.
oh no. Well, oops. A pint though is not as bad as a gallon. I can always put
Fair.
a positive spin on it, right?
Okay, so portions.
Portions, absolutely. I did want to mention though, you were talking about the mental health crisis, and it really is a crisis. And I think we have to talk about it. People are really, I said this too, I have teenage kids. I have 4 kids, 4 boys, and they're suffering. And my son's like, no, mom, I'm mentally strong. And I said, you are suffering though, like all your peers, all the friends you're missing out on so many things right now. And it's okay to say that. I said, even just socially, emotionally, physically, you're not exercising. So I talk about these things and also really try and, bring in both foods that they like and encourage them to get out every day and move, for God's sakes, move, move your body, get some fresh air.
I see the same things in my kids, and I think my kids are a little younger than yours, Susan. And and then they're already picky eaters to kind of begin with. I don't know. My daughter at the age of 2, she said nothing green, and she meant it, and she meant it. So
She stuck with it.
right.
That's strong will. Yeah.
So what I find, and maybe you can tell me what you find, but what I find sometimes is I'm making 3 dinners, and then we got allergies in my house too. So dairy allergy, gluten allergy. I'm relatively normal. If we make a pasta dish, an Italian dish, there's 3 different things going on, 3 different pots. So are there any strategies that we can have when we're dealing with kind of like these picky eaters and like the kids who don't want to eat
Ooh.
certain things, but the parents are trying to do better?
It's different in every household. I know I could talk about this for a very long time, and that's why a lot of things have to be personalized. However, what I will say is I have that going on in my house, the taste preferences and the allergies as well. I actually cook for me, if that makes sense. So, and this took me many years to get there, where I prioritize my own health and my own diet, because the parent must put on their life jacket first, right? You got to
Mm.
take your oxygen mask down, take care of yourself before you can take care of the others. So basically what I say, and I hope this helps, if you have young kids, they don't need as many vegetables as you do. Like, you're a bigger person, your nutritional needs are bigger. So first of all, like, it's okay if they have a couple days where they don't even have that vegetable, believe it or not. More importantly, I make a plate that is giving them a great example of what constitutes a really healthy diet. So in other words, my plate does
Mm.
have the huge salad on it and the vegetables, and then let's say the meat, the starch, and then the veggie and salad. So even if they only end up with a plate of the starch, i.e., a mountain of mashed potatoes, they at least see that, and because maybe the other dish is something they can't have, or like is loaded in cheese and they don't like cheese, or they're allergic to it, or whatever it is. The allergy question is a little trickier, and most families do get to a place where they can manage that. But the taste preferences, good Lord, like, there's a lot
Mm.
going on. So that's what I say to parents in general. Call it the adults in the household. If you do have children, make that meal for you first.
I'm curious too, to go back to the mental health piece. If you've got a kid who's a picky eater, have you noticed them increasing, or has that pickiness exacerbated in any way?
I think a lot of those issues are exacerbated now. Absolutely. Call it patience practices come in. And this is really, I don't have any, profound words of wisdom on this, because some days are just easier than others. And we all have our cycles. However, really honoring, and I say this speaking specifically as a parent, that the kids, back to them not, like, quote unquote, suffering and not being able to necessarily express what's going on, right? They
Right.
can't express how they're feeling. And so it comes out in other ways. And even I have to take a lot of deep breaths and a lot of step back. And I do a lot of meditation. I go up to my bedroom, like, because I can't necessarily deal with what's going on with them sometimes, and giving them the space and even the acting out. It's not easy. If we studied it right now and could capture that data, I would say that there's so much more of that going on.
What about the actual couple? I
Mhm.
find like sometimes you're only as good or as bad as your partner. My wife and I have discovered the joys of like popcorn and wine. And I didn't know that popcorn and wine went so well together, right? So it's a thing that we enjoy, but maybe it's not something that we should do. Or what are kind of the strategies there where kind of like your partner in life maybe enables you a little bit?
We thrive on those relationships, though, and support. So you develop healthy habits together, and then on the flip side, and when it is crossing over the boundaries into enabling a bad behavior, that's where it really takes, if you don't have an outside person, such as like Meredith as a counselor, or as me as your nutritionist, then it requires one person in the relationship, and it could change on a day-to-day basis to say, look, we enjoy this. And I had this conversation earlier with a couple. They like their before dinner happy hour. And I said, the before dinner happy hour, spending that time together and talking, is really important. And I think it's a very positive thing. It's just that when the types of foods, have gotten out of control, or the alcohol's gone beyond, quote unquote, moderation, that you have to decide together and support each other. Because if you want to feel good and be healthy, then you have to have your own limits.
This is something that I have to work with couples on constantly, the prioritizing time for them, taking time as a
Mhm.
couple. And even what you were saying before about taking time for you, putting your own oxygen mask on first, that's so important. But what happens if you have competing goals, where maybe one person is really trying to improve fitness and the other person is not interested at all? Do you have any tips for maybe the person who's working on their fitness to not feel discouraged?
Open communication, which isn't easy. They're uncomfortable conversations. And it's really stating your needs. Let's say you're the person who is now saying, I need to prioritize my fitness routine, and I don't need a big dinner. And I'm sorry, that's now impacting our family dinner, or you wanting to sit down like right now and have this big meal with me, but I'm not there. So this is an actual example. This comes up for people. And what I say is, having that conversation with the spouse who is resentful, and it's not easy, and maybe that one person's resentful, the other isn't, but just really having this open communication and conversation that is uncomfortable because you're in a mode of changing for the healthier and it's a priority. Nobody's going to argue with that. When you say, look, I love you and I want to be healthier for me and for you and our family, who's going to argue that? Who's going to be like, oh no,
If you're the person who's getting healthy and you become resentful of the fact that your partner is not,
is
that is
not.
actually, yeah, that's something I see a lot where people come in and say, okay, how do I tell my partner I'm no longer attracted to them because they put on weight or something like that?
I don't get involved in those conversations.
That's where you're like, I also need a Meredith. Like, you can talk about that on her couch.
Exactly. I'm like, Meredith is more appropriate right now. Things like those do come up. And it's funny, just in general, like your scope of practice, because as a nutritionist, dietitian of a zillion years, director of wellness, to understand the person as a whole and their family and get the whole picture of their life and their relationships, and then know when to say, I think you would benefit from another a counselor, therapist, or something. And sometimes I don't want to, but can get in between spouses. So I don't always often like to work with both spouses, or certainly not on the same call. I've had some awkward situations. It's like therapists too. You're this person in the middle. I'm like, not an easy role.
But if it's a health thing where you've gotten so unhealthy that it's now impacting our family, you've got limited mobility, or you've had some health issues that have caused some financial strain, or again, you're not able to do the same things that you used to. In my opinion, anyway, I think it's okay then for you to say to your partner, I love you and I want you to continue being around for our family and I'm worried about you. So it's coming from a place of support. And how can I support you in getting healthier versus the person who's purely aesthetic and is like, well, they put on some weight, but the other person is actually happy with the weight. Then I try to say, well, you need to learn to love around that, because if they're happy and they're healthy in their mind and it's not impacting you and your family negatively, then that's part of the cost of admission for being with this person.
I know for me personally, everything is a team effort, or you try to make everything a team effort anyway. And I think what happens in relationships probably, and you guys could probably speak more to it than I could, is that when you approach things from like a team dynamic, like, we're team cheeseburger today, or we're team kale today, right? So which one you gonna be? But when one person goes cheeseburger and the other person goes kale, then well, we're not a team anymore. Maybe we can meet in the middle somewhere. I don't know. Maybe that's like a turkey burger.
Isaiah, you're good at this. I'm going to remember that. Are you team kale or are you team cheeseburger? That's classic. I love that. I want kale on my burger, or maybe sauteed spinach. I don't know.
But the problem is that who picks team kale, right? Like if you had a choice, we're all on team cheeseburger. Like, how are you not on team cheeseburger?
So I love my kale salads, I have to say, and they can be, I was going to say sexy. They can be.
Okay. What are your tips for making kale sexy so that maybe you can make someone feel
Don't
like
you
team cheeseburger is
know?
less attractive?
All right, you have to massage the kale. Yeah, you need a good olive oil. Got to get in there and massage it. So, do I need to say more? You tear off the stems. You don't want any of the hard stems. Get a huge bowl of the kale that I've pulled apart, and then I drizzle it with a really good olive oil, and I do sea salt, and then you start to literally massage it so it softens. And then I add all sorts of other delicious things such as goat cheese, honey crisp apple, and some pumpkin seed, a good balsamic vinegar, and there are lots of infused balsamic vinegars. I personally love a little garlic powder, and I have hilarious discussions about it, because if you're a food purist, you want real fresh garlic. Of course, I love fresh garlic, but there's nothing easier than sprinkling a little garlic powder on your salad as well. And then you still massage it and it will melt in your mouth.
Oh man,
Susan,
can we come over to your house for dinner?
Susan, you did the impossible. You made kale sound delicious to me. Like I want to go out after this podcast right now, and I want to get myself some kale and make myself this kale salad.
Yeah.
So now we know the secret for Isaiah, right? You have to sweet talk him. You have to flirt with it a little.
Okay, and you have to put love. So it's all about love, and you have to put love into the food that you make, and then it definitely tastes better.
I love that.
And then because I'm all about balance and compromise and moderation, I would probably make a delicious, I like regular burgers, but I also like turkey burgers. So I would probably make you a burger and serve that amazing kale salad on the side instead of French fries.
I think that piqued his interest. Look at that.
Yeah, he's like,
I'm getting inspired for dinner today.
I know Isaiah loves to cook. I know he's also not a huge fan of salads. So there you go. Did I just call you out on that? Yeah, did I call him out on that?
It's all true. It's all true. I confess.
See, that's where Isaiah will have me beat every single time, because we talked about this too, that I am a chronic seamlesser. Isaiah talks about cooking and it makes your mouth water. He's got some good stuff.
So, Susan, what's the advice you have for the seamlessers out there?
I was racking my brain as you're saying that, Meredith, and but so this is so common. There are plenty of people who are alone and don't like to cook for one, and I talk to lots of clients about that every day. I think there can be a happy medium. It depends on who you are, your level of cooking skills, of course. And even that salad, though, I'm talking about, Meredith, it is not time consuming and it's actually more assembling than cooking. Take baby steps like everything else and say, you know what? I'm spending too much money. Budgetary constraints sometimes are motivating. And then I like to tell people to just pick one recipe, we're all out there on social media. There's beautiful food photos no matter what. Let's say you're on Instagram. I don't know who you follow, but find one thing that appeals to you. And my other tip is, I think Isaiah does this too. Like, we've talked a lot about food. We both live in New Jersey. It is the Garden State. There's amazing fresh foods and farms and local markets. And join some sort of a CSA, which is community supported agriculture, or get like a farm box delivered, and then you're forced to. And that's awesome. And then you can actually reach out to me and say, Susan, I got X, Y, and Z in my box. What the heck do I do with it? And I'll give you one quick and easy recipe. I promise.
If you had one thing that you could tell people, 2021 has just started. Everybody's got their resolutions and all that. So if there's one thing people could do to live a healthier lifestyle, what would that thing be?
If you really take time, could be today, could be tonight, could be right after you listen to this, to sit down and truly think about one aspect of your life or your health that you want to improve. So your wellness vision, visualizing you in this better, healthier place, just in one aspect of your life, whether it's in an exercise goal, sleeping better, better relationships, losing weight, simply eating better. Think of one area and set a goal in that. I'm a big fan of the SMART goals, the small, achievable, realistic goals. And that's the most important thing. You don't even have to put the time frame on it. The T and the SMART goals, forget the time because that puts pressure on people. Sometimes it's really just have this wellness vision, and I think you can actually muster up the feelings of how much better you're going to feel once you're there. And those positive feelings are going to motivate you before the action. Get those feelings and that vision in place and work towards it. The diet matters. Eating too late at night. I'm going to spin it over to Isaiah, and his popcorn and wine doesn't have to be bad. I do say, though, that the later it gets into the evening, if it's right before bed, chances are you're not sleeping well. And a lot of people get, I can't even tell you how many people have told me they have reflux, for God's sakes, since COVID. I'm like, it's all that late night snacking. So the timing does matter. I call sleep a superpower. I say this repeatedly because if you don't sleep well, then it impacts every aspect of the next day. It's hard to resist if you've conditioned yourself to eating, snacking late at night. It's like time where you have this letdown after a long, stressful day, whatever it is. However, if you can resist, you wake up the next day and you start your day with a good breakfast, you look forward to it, then the more days you can do that, guaranteed you're sleeping better and have better energy. I don't skip breakfast, like no matter what, with this intermittent fasting and all that, that's not the meal to skip. Even if it's a little bit later, I think it's really important to start your day with some good calories, such as I'm a big oatmeal with lots of fresh fruit and flaxseed and things like that.
Is that a function of the time in which you go to sleep? So should it be a certain amount of hours before you go to sleep, or is it a function of time period?
It's a function of time before you go to sleep. Everybody has a different circadian rhythm. Some people truly are night owls. If you're somebody who goes to bed at 1 a.m. and the last time you eat is 9 or 10 p.m., it's pretty good. Like 4 hours is what I say last time you eat. Do I always achieve that? No. However, I strive for that. And I do notice the nights that I eat dinner, I'm done eating by 8 p.m. and I typically am up till midnight. I sleep well. Well, I sleep well anyway, because that's the priority, but not eating in those 4 hours if you can before your bedtime. And when you look at that, it's hard to do sometimes.
Wow, this has been so helpful, Susan. Thank you so much for all of this helpful information. Again, I think that especially when we're in the woes of winter and round, I don't know, 2, 5, 17 of this pandemic, who knows where we are. I think during this time, yeah, everything that you're saying is so helpful and so applicable. So if people want to get in contact with you, how can they do that?
Oh, I love that. Okay. So I am Food Med RDN on Instagram because I do believe food is medicine. And I also have a website, www.susangreeley.com. And so those are two ways to find me on social media. And then I want to mention my, call it real job. I am a National Director of Wellness Services for a concierge medicine company called CCPHP, Meredith. And I have launched a podcast myself called A Sense of Wellness. And I'm very excited to get that out to people. And that will be on Spotify and Apple Podcasts as well. So that can be also be found at ccphp.net/SENS/podcast. Hard to say. That was a mouthful. And it's for sleep. The SENS is for sleep, exercise, nutrition, and stress. And then podcast. So in any case, I'm out there and I would love to connect with people.
Yeah, we really hope that people will listen to your podcast after this. And hopefully we can have you back at some point too.
I'd be thrilled. I can talk, Isaiah knows that I can talk food and wellness and health all day. This has been a lot of fun.
Yeah, this was every bit as fun as I thought it would be, Susan. You're inspirational to me personally, and I'm sure to many people out there. And I highly encourage everybody to contact you. And you've done the impossible again. You've made kale sexy.
Woohoo! That's my mission. I love it. Thank you. That honors me, actually.
Love Me or Leave Me is a podcast production of the Board brand. This podcast is for informational purposes only. It does not constitute medical or legal advice and is not a substitute for professional consultation, diagnoses, or treatment. Always follow up with a licensed attorney or healthcare professional who can address your specific needs. Thanks for listening.